Heading into free agency, just a few days away. Larry, what do you think of the Chris Paul trade first and foremost? I haven't had a chance to really get your thoughts on the Jordan Poole for Chris Paul trade.
I mean, I suggested it on my channel a week before it happened, but my suggestion was Paul for Poole, and the Warriors would get Washington's lottery pick. Because you're trading a 38-year-old, you're trading for a 38-year-old player, you're trading who's hurt, you got a 24-year-old kid. I just figured, well, maybe the Warriors would get a pick, but that's how devalued Jordan Poole is. The Warriors had to include multiple assets: a number one, a future number two, Ryan Rollins, Patrick Baldwin. These guys were all part of this deal. So, I was a little surprised by what the Warriors had to attach. I thought maybe the Wizards would attach picks coming back of somehow to even it out, but it speaks to the leverage. And when Draymond Green opted out, he created a leverage situation. When Steve Kerr went on Draymond's podcast, he added to that leverage situation. That leverage was owned by Washington's general manager Mike Dunleavy. So if Mike had a hard time making that deal or didn't make the deal he wanted to make, he could blame Draymond, he can blame Kerr, because those guys added to the Wizards' leverage, I thought, by the way they talked about Poole and the way they referenced him. So, the contract that Poole had also hurt the Warriors' leverage. I think the word around the league was probably, the Warriors have to make us, they read it as, Green's opted out. They prefer Green. They want to go with Green. So the Wizards knew they had the Warriors over a barrel. But as far as going forward, I think it cleans up the Warrior cap. It saves Joe over $100 million. It probably keeps Draymond in the fold, which ultimately makes Kerr and Steph happy. These things all matter, and we're all factors. And I think it makes you more efficient. You're going to have less turnovers. And, the question I would ask back to you, Dibs, is do you think that the combo of Podziemski as a shooter, 44% from beyond the arc, as opposed to what Poole shot in the playoffs, 25%, the combo of Podziemski and Paul as a facilitator, the combination of those guys might be a more efficient, combo than what Poole offered as a guy who did both roles for at least this year with right. Chris Paul.
And all eyes are on this year for me in terms of this trade. You don't look beyond this year because Chris Paul will be gone and that roster, or rather that salary, will come off the books, which I think was a big motivation for this trade. You got out from underneath Jordan Poole and 4 years worth of big-time money. You got Chris Paul for the same money basically for this year, and then 3 years of flexibility. And also, if it doesn't work out this year with Klay Thompson, and we'll get into that part of it with the Larry Harris sound coming up, but let's just assume that you keep Klay Thompson and you've got CP3 and Draymond and Wiggins and Steph, and you go for it this year and it doesn't work. Maybe the year ends the way last year ended with Klay Thompson struggling in the postseason. Well, then you have an opportunity to get out from underneath Klay Thompson's money as well. And that's $73 million between Klay and Chris Paul that you're going to pay him this year that you won't have to pay him next year. And again, this is obviously a bit of a worst case scenario in terms of it not working out. Ideally, you win the championship and then Chris Paul retires and goes off into the sunset with the one thing that he's never had. And then Klay comes back on a rework deal and Joe Lacob pays through the nose again because you got your fifth title over the course of 10 years. And so you're happy to do it. So whatever happens in between, they're going to have to resolve based on how much money they want to spend.
There is one other angle to this thing that I think we haven't mentioned, which is this trade also allows the Warriors, if it doesn't work this year, to move off of Chris Paul, and the team that would acquire Chris Paul next summer could then say goodbye to Paul, not owe him a penny, and the Warriors could hit a reset with that $30 million and some collection of players if they wanted to trade him for players next summer. So it gives them an opportunity to clean up their cap potentially or extend it with another move next summer, and it gives them better chemistry and more efficiency this year. And I think Jordan Poole's a broken player. I really do. So I like Jordan, but I think he's a broken player. I think he's no longer – I think we looked at what he's done and not where his career is. And where his career is that he's a guy that, should shoot 94% from the foul line, but doesn't get calls and then starts to pout and then stops playing. And I think, he was one of the guys that I think was kind of about himself a little bit. And there's a couple other guys that I think were about themselves. And I think they want to. The one thing I love about Podziemski is he's a crazy competitor. And that, to me, is a huge element in his skill set.
And he's an intangibles guy who doesn't need to go out there and score 15 to feel like he's helping the team. And I actually made the call on our draft show from Chase Center that they were going to take Podziemski. And I will give you a solid assist, not a hockey assist. You get the Chris Paul assist because you were the first one to hit me to Podziemski and the player he is and the fact that he might be an ideal fit for this team. So when we did our draft show, I told Mark Willard, I said, I think they're taking Podziemski with the first round pick. Come to find out they did. So credit Larry Kruger for his very thorough draft analysis and his draft prep, which got me thinking Podziemski. I think that he would be a good player to fit with what they need in the second unit, but I pause, and I'll borrow from the 408 on the Comcast Business text line. He will be lighting it up from 3 in Santa Cruz. Come on, man. Kerr isn't playing anyone without 5 years experience in the league. There is that part of it that makes me pause in terms of, is Podziemski going to be that player with the second unit? Because Goo makes a good point about who's going to fill in for Jordan Poole's 20 points that you're not going to have. Well, Chris Paul is going to get you 10 of that in reduced minutes. CP3 will get you 10 to 12 a night, I think, consistently. But where do the other 8 to 10 points come from? I think Podziemski would be a great guy to fill in for that role, but it doesn't feel like Steve Kerr likes playing teenagers.
Well, I don't think he likes playing underskilled basketball players that are just kind of cutting their teeth and trying to improve. I think if you have and Larry Harris referenced this in the interview that he did that I saw Steve was looking for, he wants young players that have one bankable skill that they can rely on night after night. And this kid's bankable skill is his ability to shoot the ball. So that is, I think, what, I do think both these rookies will wind up playing roles this year for the Warriors. But I thought it was also interesting, Harris said that Warriors had options to move back to 20, 21, maybe even further and pick up more draft capital. And in a deep draft, maybe that was the route to go. But they felt like maybe Brooklyn would have taken him with one of their 2 picks, and they didn't want to take a chance on losing him. Bill Duffy is his agent. He's a friend of mine, and Bill's one of the power brokers in the NBA, and I'm sure he sold the Warriors' ownership and front office on the advantages of Podziemski. And what I'll say this about the kid, too. I love the confidence. The kid's got crazy confidence, and he had a tremendous year for Herb Sendek at Santa Clara. He's not just a shooter, but I think he's a deficient defender, but I think he's a good team defender. It'll be interesting to see. I mean, TJD's got some really nice, to me, there's a lot of Draymond Green kind of qualities there. He's got huge hands, like James Worthy type hands, and he's a low block passer, and I think that's going to help. Guy averaged almost 5 assists a game in the Big Ten.
Led the team. And size on the defensive end and rim protection that they don't have with Kevon Looney. And Draymond Green is a great defender, but he's not a rim protector. Jonathan Kuminga's got all the athleticism to do it, but he hasn't yet put that together. But I think in terms of the second-round draft pick, he does bring those intangibles defensively, which is what you need. Offensively, you're going to be fine, I think, in terms of getting contributions from the rooks. And now you have to think about what you're going to do in terms of veteran minimum guys to round out the roster, because you've seen a reluctance of this coaching staff to really lean on the young guys. But now Moses Moody, Jonathan Kuminga, they're going to have to be leaned upon as almost veterans on this team.
If they're here. I mean, I love Kuminga, and I don't want to see him go anywhere, but I was kind of celebrating that to one of my Warrior Insider people the other day, and he said, hey, look, I'd pump the brakes on the celebration on Kuminga's return. Like, it's far from, a fait accompli that he's coming back. So that kind of made me nervous, but that could be part of this significant move that I think is coming after July 1st that's going to remake the roster a little bit.
Yeah, and I love that. And we'll get into that sound here coming up on the other side. Larry Kruger in for Mark Willard here. It's Willard and Dibs with free agency set to really start Friday with the new league year and players and teams able to announce deals at that point. And that being said, Draymond Green, do you think that deal is already done, ink to paper, or virtually ink to paper, or do you believe some of the rumors that are out there about Draymond in Detroit and Draymond in Sacramento?
Well, first of all, if Draymond leaves, I take back everything I said about the Chris Paul
no
trade.
take backs.
That's a nightmare train wreck trade.
If I agree with you, if Draymond's gone, it's a trade that you absolutely could not make.
Yeah, I mean, then it's,
and do you think they know that too,
bad.
Larry? Do you think that the Warriors approach this in that same way? Like, would they have made the Jordan Poole trade if they weren't 100% sure, 99.99% sure that Draymond was coming back?
I don't think so. I really don't think so.
Because how could you justify trying to go veteran heavy if you're losing your key piece in Draymond Green?
Which I think in some ways Draymond hurt his own leverage as far as how much money he got by probably leveraging Poole out in the trade, right? Because, hey, man, you make this move, you got a great chance to retain me, and so now what? You're going to ask for the moon? I think 3 years, $90 million makes sense. I know that's a lot of people feel that's too high, but I think Sacramento's going to pivot over to Kuzma. I think Detroit's going to retain their cap room. Portland, I always think that's been kind of a swing for the fences kind of a addition.
Right.
And I think ultimately you got to take Draymond at his word, which he said, hey, you know what? I want to be a Warrior. I want to go in. I want to go out with the guys I came in with. If you believe he's just all bluster, then, and I don't. I take him at his word. I think he does want to go out with Steph and with the Warriors. And I think he also understands his place in history is a little bit more, his place in the hall is secure in my mind, but his legacy is tied to this franchise.
Agreed.
And I don't think he would be the same way Steph is not going to be as good without Draymond. I don't think Draymond's as good without Steph. He doesn't have these assist totals unless he's playing with Steph. You pass it to LeBron in the corner, LeBron's going to brick that shot. You pass it to Steph in the corner, you jog back on defense with an extra assist in the assist column.
Or Clay on the wing, and also I think if you really want to win another championship, and Draymond is one of the most competitive athletes we've ever seen, you have an equal chance, if not a better chance, to do that here with known commodities, with an owner who is going to do everything that he can legally under the cap and over the cap to put out a winning product, as opposed to Sacramento, a team that hasn't won a playoff series in almost 20 years, and a Laker team that seems to be a constant roster churn, or Detroit, where you're starting over in Detroit. You're basically going to be Mr. Mom in Detroit if you go there as Draymond Green.